So Juneteenth was this past Thursday. And I was just wondering what y'all thought about Juneteenth. I'm wondering if you guys are like me or perhaps like my uncle. So last Sunday for Father's Day, he and I were planning to get together. And all he wanted to do, it wasn't like, oh, let's get together, let's go to lunch or dinner or whatever. It was, he's new to Georgia, like ain't barely been here a month basically. And his thing was, I gotta get to a Juneteenth festival. I gotta get to a Juneteenth festival. Now me, I don't particularly have to celebrate Juneteenth. I am not caught up in the Juneteenth hoopla. We'll get to that in a moment. But because it's Father's Day, and this is my elder, my uncle, I went, once I got out of church, I was on Facebook looking through events, trying to find a Juneteenth celebration on the Sunday prior to, right? Because Juneteenth is in the middle of the week. So you had a variety of elements where Juneteenth celebrations were happening last Saturday. And then I come to find out people were actually having them in the middle of the week. Well, look, I'm not, my mind is not programmed to be out at a festival. I don't care what it's about during the week. My mind is just not programmed like that. And and not only that, the rain in Georgia has been real ridiculous. And so we had some Juneteenth festivals locally in my area. They got like rained out that Friday and that Saturday. It was so ridiculous. And but what was difficult was finding something on that Sunday. And so I found something. The NAACP was having one in Marietta. Now I'm on the south side. We talking Henry County is where I was in church, and then I had to come down the road down McDonough in Clayton to get him. Okay, and we drove all the way to Marietta to the square in the middle of town for the NAACP's festival. We weren't in Marietta not even 10 minutes. We were in the park maybe 5, just low-key flabbergasted. We didn't remain. There was a stage there, and somebody that was singing to a track, and it was like a worship song or something. But they had the big Juneteenth fanfare. It was like, the signage, right? Juneteenth. And it just seemed like, my uncle said, this looks like the locals threw this together. And it was like below meh. It was confirming what my bigger issue with what Juneteenth looks like, what it's about here. And I just was like disgusted. And I thought, this is the NAACP? And we're originally from Chicago. And I was just like, what? We have like festivals in Chicago. And I can almost bet your bottom dollar that if there was Juneteenth celebrations going on in Chicago, we would have had, matter of fact, it didn't even got to be a festival. Today is Sunday. If you go to 67th Street Beach, 63rd Street Beach, Battle Water, every Sunday, the brothers be drumming out there. And the dancers come. We go in and out. It be a mini festival every Sunday. Every Sunday. Now, for around 4th of July weekend or whatever, they have the big African Festival, International Festival in Washington Park. Oh my gosh. I can't even. And so it take a lot to impress me, but so I know everything is not going to be Chicago. That's not the reason why I be feeling meh about it. So I go there and I'm like, okay, the so-so person singing to the track, praise and worship. And as we were leaving, put your hands together. And so I'm like, this is not the gospel fest. And I'm blood bought. I love them. Like, I said, but this is not the gospel fest. I feel like there was like no legit budget and no forethought put together at all. There was not a food vendor on site, not a food truck on site. There were some tables of, NAACP stuff, and the locals had came and they was just sitting out there in the park. I feel like it was just something for them to do, on a Sunday. They were just sitting there, but there was nothing in the remotest way that had to do with Juneteenth when we pulled up, having driven all the way from the South Side. I was like, oh my wow. Trash. Okay. So, get back on the thing. Now, I was trying to avoid going into the city, going into Atlanta. But of course, we passed Atlanta to get to Marietta. But now, we're desperate. So I said, we're going to go to Piedmont Park. And I was loathing it because I'm like, parking is going to be trash. I expected crowdedness. I'll tell you what we found. We pulled up right on the spot, right by the park. Didn't have to swoop around out one time. The Lord was with me. Okay. And so the festival, it wasn't a big festival. It wasn't a huge turnout at all. But at least there was some forethought. There was a variety of acts. There was a Beyonce tribute troupe. They did a dance, and we were so far back, but they did a medley of hits and stuff, and they got some wannabe rappers up there, but it wasn't like too trap-like or whatever. It wasn't outrageous. I say all that to say, at least there seemed to be some kind of thought put through. Somebody did something, and I appreciate the host. He took time to say, Happy Juneteenth. He went down this rabbit hole of stop the violence, etc. Woo, woo, woo. Okay. Remind us why we're here. Don't just put up a sign that say Juneteenth. And that's because you get a lot of black folk, the people supposed to come. And then at least they had a bunch, like for, when there's a festival, you go down that one long pathway. They had a gazillion food vendors, people selling stuff. There was forethought. Okay. And so I appreciated that. But I wish I was where I am right now, in the AC at the crib. And so I live in Fayette County. And so Trilith, what they had that weekend was, and they switch it up every year. On Friday, they had a Juneteenth paint and sip. I don't know what they got to do with Juneteenth, but it was a paid event. Like, people paid good money, and it got rained on. The paint and sip stuff was outside. If you know about Trilith, it was right alongside Fairway Social, and that thing got rained through. Now, I don't know if the paint and sip, they were painting, stuff that, that celebrates, black people. I don't know, but I was just wondering, what's the forethought with that, with paint and sip? Now, the first year that Trilith did a Juneteenth celebration, it was like a block party, basically. You had spoken word artists. They had performers, and there was a theme behind it. It seemed to be like a more community type fair. It wasn't like this one-off thing with the paint and sip. So I say that to say, Juneteenth is still fairly new as a holiday. I did not know about Juneteenth, the significance of it, until just a couple of years ago, like many other Americans, which is a shame because that's pretty huge. That Texas waited 2 years to get the news. Like, we have this, what we're talking on right now. I guess I'm just jaded. Now, here's my thoughts. My uncle, he's all things Africa this, Africa that, and he reminds me so much of where I was, like in my 20s and to mid 30s and stuff, where everything was about black. And I think most of that comes from the church. that I went to, which was a big mega church in Chicago. And if you guys know about Trinity United Church of Christ, especially in its heyday under Jeremiah Wright Jr., Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright, let me put some respect on that. The theme was and still is Christ, community, and culture. But if you were immersed in the inner workings like I was, and now I'm stepping back and I look at it, it really is more culture, community, Christ. There's such a syncretism of Africa, with Christianity. I remember one of Dr. Jeremiah Wright's when he spoke about voodoo. Because I remember when I went to Puerto Rico and went to their African museum, and they had like a shrine. I happily took a picture of it, and they were explaining the origins of voodoo. And I remember when I first heard about voodoo from my pastor, not the westernized, he made it seem like it was a beautiful thing and all of that. And I come out of this and I think, wow, he was normalizing voodoo as a Christian. And I know in this day and age, people be thinking it's Jesus and this, but the Bible is clear. It's not Jesus and this. So ain't nowhere in the world should be Christianity in bed with voodoo. That ain't what the good book says. So I say all that to say, so many people are impressed with things that they don't understand, and I won't sit here and pretend like I understand, but I know I'm not going to tap into things that I'm not familiar with. So people be Africa this, like, I have a couple of tattoos again from that era, and my uncle has a lot of African symbolism tattoos and stuff, but he's never been. He's mighty happy that he has a Ghanaian girlfriend, and he said he told her that about me, and I don't know nothing about her. He said, I think you would really like my older niece, that's me, because she's really deep into her African stuff, especially from the church she used to be a part of. And it's like he doesn't even know the woman I am today. And I just let him talk. I left Father's Day on a light note with him. My blackness is not, even though in this country, that's the first thing you see, my identity is in Christ. And so, do I have anything against Juneteenth being recognized federally as a holiday? Absolutely not, even though I work that day. It's not a holiday on my job. I don't have a problem with it. I don't like the commercialization of it. Just like I don't like the commercialization of Christmas. I despise it. And I don't, like I said, even it's not just being shirts sold at Target or whatever big company. It's the crappy celebrations that are just thrown together and people just slap a Juneteenth sign on it and some black, green, and red and say Happy Juneteenth. Like that piss poor thrown together effort with the NAACP. I thought it was trash. So yeah, just my thoughts about it. And I know my opinion might not be as popular as a Christian, and I'm not interested in I don't think a festival defines that. Like I saw a bunch of signs about the smaller events, throughout. I think, to put things into a bigger perspective, and shout out to you if you stuck with me 14 minutes long again as I rambled my thoughts on camera. Festivals in general, to me, have seemed to have lost their touch. I just feel like promoters get together, they take vendors' their money, they do a little bit of promotion, and people who have nothing else to do show up and they spend their money. They just go to eat and buy these little cheap tchotchkes that are made and manufactured in China, and people get their hustle on. But I don't think the momentum or the sentiment of whatever the theme is there. I just get turned off by festivals now. I remember when festivals were festivals. I remember when the Taste of Chicago was a thing. That was the official kickoff of summer. You ate, but it was like the community of it all. You had to be there. I ran into so and so, and the food was fooding. I remember when going to my uncle. He don't go to church, but he go to the Gospel Fest every year in Chicago. I remember when the Gospel Fest used to be like the who's who of gospel music would come, and that festival I think lasted at least an entire week. And it over time, like within the last 10 years, that fest got small. It used to be down in Grant Park in the middle of downtown Chicago, and it got smaller and smaller, and then they began to have it in a smaller park on the south side, and you might get like one great artist. So they like, I feel like the funding and the sponsorship kept getting pulled, and so it became just no anticipation for that. Now I will tell you what I think is still alive and well, and is still a beautiful thing to go to, is the House Music Festival that happens typically around the 4th of July weekend in Chicago. I know for a fact that still bops. That still bops, and people, you gonna go to that. Thankfully, the House Music Festival is still a thing to do. Yeah. So, yeah, I think Juneteenth has, maybe it'll get better. Maybe somebody who's into planning, who Juneteenth is their thing, and they seek to give it its just due. I think it needs to, it's kind of like how with Christians, how we use the Christmas season and the Easter season, which are two very important things because they're centered around Christ. Like they're specifically about his birth and his death, burial, and resurrection. It has to do with the actual tie to the belief system. Like he lived. He was born. He actually lived. He was persecuted. He was crucified. They buried him. He resurrected. He came back, walked with some people for a few days. People like, man, I thought we saw him go there. So because those are central to the faith, we tend to take even more time. That's the time where the world is probably a little bit more open. Everybody talk about Christmas, even though they believe. So it's an opportunity for us to go big with the gospel, right? Even though we should be doing it every chance we get. That's 363 more opportunities in a year. Nevertheless, it's a time to educate, to give the pure gospel about why we believe what we believe. I think the same thing can be done for Juneteenth if that's your thing. If you care to do it, I just don't care to do it. I don't know. Maybe in general, I'm losing. I'm just losing I would say the sacredness or the expectation of holidays in general. Maybe I'm just in a moment where celebrate your life. Get together with your community and y'all make a big deal about everybody being off on a particular Saturday, and come over and I fry up some oyster mushrooms for y'all, and we have a time and we talk. You know what I'm saying? And we get to know one another. Doesn't have to be a holiday. And that just came to mind because I did that in my new place, and it was such a joy to do, and I felt back in my element where now that I have more space to entertain, and maybe that's what I appreciate, and it doesn't have to be a holiday. Oh my goodness, this video turned out to be way longer than I wanted to, so feel free to give your comments. Have a wonderful Sunday, y'all. Well, you know what? This is going to be posted tomorrow, okay? Because y'all got another video to chew on from earlier.